the 31st, right? Welcome to another edition of Cultivating the Culture. This is January 31st, and it's having a storm out there, so we're starting our show early. And as always, with our show, we start off with our great brother, Malik Shabazz, Malcolm X.
Nowadays, you learn how to do is see for yourself and listen for yourself and think for yourself, and then you can come to an intelligent decision for yourself. But if you form the habit of going by what you hear others say about someone, or going by what others think about someone, instead of going and searching that thing out for yourself and seeing for yourself, you will be walking west when you think you're going east. You'll be walking east when you think you're going west. So this generation, especially of our people, have a burden upon themselves more so than at any other time in history. The most important thing we can learn how to do today is think for ourselves. It's good to keep wide open ears and listen to what everybody else has to say. But when you come to make a decision, you have to weigh all of what you heard of its own and place it where it belongs. And then come to a decision for yourself, and you'll never regret it. But if you form the habit of taking what someone else says about a thing without checking it out for yourself, you'll find that other people will have you hating your own friends and loving their enemies.
Welcome back. And as always, we start off with our brother Malcolm, and what our objective of our show is to get you to be able to think for yourself, cultivating the culture. And for those that don't know, our program is sponsored by our group, Jamaat Al-Sijin, which is right here. That's the shirt that we have. And also Ummah al-Iman, which Ummah al-Iman is a nation of faith, and that's what we do. We work with people of all religions, but focus on one faith. And Jamaat Al-Sijin is a prison ministry that we're doing. Now we're getting ready to approach the so-called Black History Month, or what we call Black Our Story Month, and that's during that month we're gonna definitely go over our story and from our view, talking about our historians, our great people of the past, but give it from our view. Last week we started with Malcolm X, and good, Martin Luther King, and we did his last speech, and his also we started with his speech before he died, his last sermon. We went over that. We went over the majority of it, and now we're just going to do the last part of that, and then do his last speech that happened the day before he died. Also I have my guest, my son. His name is Tariq Ibn Jamil. Tariq Ibn Jamil. And today, like I said, we're starting early, but we have a snowstorm here, so I'm making that adjustment. So forgive me for any errors. But we're starting off with a speech in 37 minutes, and here we go. This is our brother Martin.
I pray God that America will hear this before it's too late, because today we are fighting a war. I'm convinced that it is one of the most unjust wars that has ever been fought in the history of the world. Our involvement in the war in Vietnam has torn up the Geneva Accord. It has strengthened the military-industrial complex. It has strengthened the forces of reaction in our nation. It has put us against the self-determination of the vast majority of Vietnamese people and put us in the position of protecting a corrupt regime that is stacked against the poor. It has played havoc with our domestic destinies. This day we are spending $500,000 to kill every every time we kill one, we spend about $500,000, while we spend only $53 a year for every person characterized as poverty-stricken in the so-called poverty program, which is not even a good skirmish against poverty.
And in this sermon, this is the sermon that he had at the National Cathedral. And this was March 31st, 1968, a few days before he was killed. And he was talking about Vietnam War. And in this, at the National Cathedral, which is in Washington, you had politicians, you had other people. This was a major stage. And this was something that he broke off from the regular type of sermons that we have when you go to somebody, a visiting church or a church that's predominantly European and Americans. And he spoke about Vietnam War. But as you notice, the statement that he made is the amount of money that they spend just to kill one person. But yet, you know, he said $50,000? Yeah. $500,000.
And $53 per person.
Right.
For our poverty-stricken people.
And so this was 52 years ago, and we see that we're still at that pace. We're still doing that. I remember I saw one thing when they talked about drones. Said a drone costs $2 million. So, you know, one of these drones, they may kill 4 people. So they're pretty much focusing on that. We spend a lot of money to kill, but we don't spend a lot of money to build. And that hasn't changed, and that needs to change.
Not only that, it has put us in a position of appearing to the world as an arrogant nation. Here we are 10,000 miles away from home, fighting for the so-called freedom of the Vietnamese people when we've not even put our own house in order. We force young black men and young white men to fight and kill in brutal solidarity. And yet when they come back home, they can't hardly live on the same block together. The judgment of God is upon us today. And we could go right down the line and see that something must be done, and something must be done quickly. We have alienated ourselves from other nations, so we end up morally and politically isolated in the world. There's not a single major ally of the United States of America that would dare send a troop to Vietnam, and so the only friends that we have now are a few quiet nations like Taiwan, Thailand, South Korea, and a few others. This is where we are. Mankind must put an end to war. A war will put an end to mankind. And the best way to start is to put an end to the war in Vietnam, because if it continues, we will inevitably come to the point of confronting China, which could lead the whole world to nuclear annihilation. It is no longer a choice, my friends, between violence and nonviolence. It is either nonviolence or non-existence, and the alternative to disarmament, the alternative to a greater suspension of nuclear tests, the alternative to strengthening the United Nations and thereby disarming the whole world, may well be a civilization plunged into the abyss of annihilation, and our earthly habitat will be transformed into an inferno that even the mind of Dante could not imagine. This is why I felt the need of raising my voice against that war and working wherever I can to arouse the conscience of our nation on it.
Just pausing that for a minute. You know, a lot of times, especially like I was at that time when this speech was made in '64. I was 4 years old, so I was a kid. But I know by the time I went to college in '82, you know, 17, 18, I went to Boston University, which that's where Martin Luther King got his doctorates from. So he had a center for him, and they had statues about him and stuff, and then we would listen to his speeches. I mean, and it's amazing because the racism that I went through in Boston in the '80s, imagine what this man went through in the '50s and stuff. To be up in that place, and then to be able to achieve a doctor's degree at that university. I mean, I had racism, from the professors, and dealing with it, and of course dealing with the city of Boston. So, but for him at this time, giving this type of speech, and speaking against the war was major. I mean, but let me finish. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna play this, and then I'm gonna go into his last one because we only have an hour, and the second one is 47 minutes. So
I remember so well when I first took a stand against the war in Vietnam. The critics took me on, and they had their say in the most negative and sometimes most vicious way. One day a newsman came to me and said, "Dr. King, don't you think you're going to have to stop now opposing the war and move more in line with the administration's policy? Because I understand it has hurt the budget of your organization, and people who once respect you have lost respect. People who once respected you have lost respect for you. Don't you feel that you really got to change your position?" I looked at him and I had to say, "Sir, I'm sorry, you don't know me. I'm not a consensus leader. I do not determine what is right and wrong by looking at the budget of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference or by taking a sort of Gallup poll of the majority opinion. Ultimately, a genuine leader is not a searcher for consensus, but a mold of consensus."
I'm gonna pause for that. I'm gonna read over. He said, "I'm not a consensus leader. I do not determine what is right and wrong by looking at the budget of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. I have not taken a sort of Gallup poll of the majority opinion. Ultimately, a genuine leader is not a searcher of consensus, but a molder of consensus." You see, and this is what they've turned our leadership into today. Is if you don't say what the average person agrees upon and stuff. Now the general consensus, then they have a problem. Next thing you know, the leader's making an apology. And for your age group, your leaders that they're pushing forth as far as young guys. I mean, I guess it's the athletes and the entertainers and stuff. And because all of them, their salary, their existence is dependent upon commercial industry, then they've fallen into that. So what he talked about a leader is not supposed to be. This is basically what is presented today. Even if you're a politician, because he was not a politician. A lot of times, politicians and everybody like to take claim, to Martin, but Martin was a reverend, and Martin was an activist and stuff. So, and it's difficult to be able to maintain that type of leadership because when you're depending on that check, like he even said, the man expected him to change because they were attacking his economics and stuff. So,
On some positions, cowardice asks the question, is expedient? And then expediency comes along and asks the question, is it politic? Vanity asks the question, is it popular? And conscience asks the question, is it right? And there comes a time when one must take a position that is neither safe, nor politic, nor popular. But he must do it because conscience tells him it is right. And I believe today that that is a need for all people of goodwill to come with a massive act of conscience and say, in the words of the old Negro spiritual, we ain't gonna study war no more. This is the challenge facing modern man. Let me close by saying that we have difficult days ahead in the struggle for justice and peace. But I will not yield to a politic of despair. I'm going to maintain hope. As we come to Washington in this campaign, the cards are stacked against us. This time we will really confront a Goliath. God grants that we will be that David of truth set out against the Goliath of injustice, the Goliath of neglect, the Goliath of refusing to deal with the problems, and go on with a determination to make America the truly great America that it is called to be.
Okay, it said the Goliath of refusing to deal with the problems and go on with the determination to make America the truly great America that it's called to be. Does that sound familiar? Man, I guess Donald Trump was still in some things from MLK, but he was changing it around, you know. And see, this is what they do. they steal our phrases, or they'll steal things and they set a pace. And here it is. Martin Luther King is talking about making America great again, or making America great. And, you know, his perspective of making it great is definitely different than the Donald Trump. But what happens is now we, as people of African descent, want to run away from that term about making America great, run away from America, run away from any rights of being an American, that's what your opposition wants you to do. They want you to give up your rights. Like I was talking with the people about the voting. You know, you think about after slavery, when the slaves got the ex-slaves got the right to vote, if any person came up to them and said to them, "Man, you shouldn't vote," you know, it don't matter, they would look at them like they're crazy. They're like, "We've been slaves and owned property, and we got a right to vote, and you're telling me that I shouldn't vote?" You would clearly see who the enemy is. But 100 years later, now we have our own people doing that. So, I mean, so they're always constantly taking our phrases and flipping them around to get us to hate what is the right way.
I say to you that our goal is freedom. And I believe we're going to get there. Because however much she strays away from it, the goal of America is freedom. Abused and scorned though we may be as a people, our destiny is tied up in the destiny of America. Before the Pilgrim Fathers landed at...
And stop. How many times you heard, like he said, our destiny, he said our destiny is tied to the destiny of America, you know. And so many times we're hoping for the fall of our own country, you know, in the situation because we have corrupt individuals. No, let the fall of the corrupt individuals happen. But as far as our country, if they don't want it, we can take it over. We can be in charge. We can do right. They don't want to follow the law and do things right and be fair and just. We can take it over. I said, but what are we going to do? Leave and go somewhere else and be oppressed? I mean, you know, anyway.
But we were here. Or Jefferson etched across the pages of history the majestic words of the Declaration of Independence. We were here. Before the beautiful words of the Star-Spangled Banner were written, we were here.
Hey,
For more than 2
before
centuries,
the Pilgrims came,
our forebears labored here without wages. They made cotton king, and they built the homes of their masters in the midst of the most humiliating and oppressive conditions. And yet out of a bottomless vitality, they continue to grow and develop. If the inexpressible cruelties of slavery couldn't stop us,
right,
the opposition that we now face will surely fail.
Hold on. This should be inspiration. This should be something that we should have today. And he said, yet out of the bottomless vitality, they continued to grow and develop. He said they made cotton king, and they built their homes of their masters in the midst of the most humiliating and oppressive condition. He said, and yet out of a bottomless vitality, they continued to grow and develop. If this inexpressible cruelties of slavery couldn't stop us, the opposition that we face now will surely fail. And this is the statement. This is, you know, we always hear, I have a dream. Oh, one day little white boys and black boys and holding hands. And this is what, you know, the commercialization has pushed. But they don't push this statement of power, that nothing can stop us. You know how many times I've talked with people, and when I say, let's do this, yeah, but they're going to stop it. They're not going to let us, you know, we can't. How many times you hear that? Most of the time.
Every
and this,
time.
yeah.
Every time.
Yeah, this is the training. This is the training what they've done for the next generation. As why? Because we don't have our great men, you know, and the statements of our great men that are put forth from people. And that's basically what we're doing, going over it. We're trying to.
Win our freedom because both the sacred heritage of our nation and the eternal will of the Almighty God are embodied in our echoing demands. And so however dark it is, however deep the angry feelings are and the violent explosions are, I can still sing, we shall overcome. We shall overcome because the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. We shall overcome because Carlyle is right. No lie can live forever.
No lie can live forever.
We shall overcome because William Cullen Bryant is right. Truth crushed earth will rise again.
Truth crushed the earth will
We shall overcome because James Russell Lowell is right, as we were singing earlier today. Truth forever on the scaffold, wrong forever on the throne, yet that scaffold sways the future. And behind the dim unknown standeth God within the shadow, keeping watch above his own. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair the stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. Thank God for John, who said, as
That's what he said. So he said, and what did he say? What did he push? What did he emphasize? He said, with this faith. You know, he talked about it with this faith. And that's what we're trying to do. Like I said, Umatali Man is a nation of faith. And that's what we try to do, restoring, bringing it back to our culture, bringing it back to the culture of faith. If you look at MLK and you look at Malcolm X, both of these were men of faith, men that were not politicians, men that were not commercial products. Like I said, I went and actually saw that whole movie,
One Night in Miami.
Yes.
What did you think?
I did not like it. It's, you know, first of all, what we have to do, it's important for us when we look at these movies, not to see who the director was, because everybody likes the Regina. She's a director. We have to look at who, I need that. Yeah, we have to look at who is actually the author, you know, who wrote it, who's the playwright. And the person that wrote it is a guy that never heard of him before. He never got any play. He just came out of nowhere. And all of a sudden, you know, now he's, you know, writing this, and Disney gave him, what is it, Pilex or whatever, something like that. They gave him something that they never gave anybody else before. And, you know, they put him in that position. And when you write these plays, you write it with an agenda. You know, unless you're a lover, you know Malcolm X down back, you know Muhammad Ali, you know about these people's lives. I was just a person that said, hey, let me put something together to push an agenda. And a lot of the agenda was clear because, you know, if you remember one scene from the Malcolm X movie was when they went to the police station. And when they were at the police station and the crowd had gathered and the nation brothers had gathered, and when Malcolm came out, Malcolm just looked at the people and he just pointed a direction. The soldiers left, his people, and then also the crowd dispersed. So this is the type of clout. This is the type of clout that Malcolm had. So, but when you look at the movie, you have it that this great man is with some kids, because Malcolm was 39 years old. You know, Muhammad Ali was 21. You know, in his 20s or whatever, early 20s. All of them get in their 20s. No 20-year-old is going to be that disrespectful to a man that great. And so they belittled him and put him to a level that he was not on. And the respect that these youth at that time would not have given, no disrespect. Oh, man, yeah, I want to hang out with the girl. I mean, come on. So it's an agenda. And it's just reminding me of the agenda of, well, you know, this whole thing of taking our leadership and changing them and to make them normal, just like anybody else. Hey, I'm happy, I'm famous. You know, the consensus type of people. So, I mean, I don't know. But anyway, the second part is the day before he died, he had a speech and he spoke to the people. And so we're going to play that one. And we're going to start off because it's 37 minutes. So we're going to start off after 7 minutes.
There's something getting done and done in a hurry to bring the colored peoples of the world out of their long years of poverty, their long years of hurt and neglect. The whole world is doomed. Now, I'm just happy that God has allowed me this period to see what is unfolding. And I'm happy that he's allowed me to be in Memphis. I can remember when Negroes were just going around, as Ralph has said, so often scratching where they didn't itch and laughing when they were not tickled.
How did we return back to that? He said scratching where they didn't itch and laughing where they were not tickled. Basically being clowns and buffoons.
Okay.
You know, and this is how it is and stuff. Laughing in this type of situation. That's why when you look at the media, you look at the movies, you know, we're great with comedians. We're great as entertainers. You know, we can entertain you all day long when it comes to it. Like he even talked about where he said when he started stepping off the path and not entertaining them, then they're like, oh, well, maybe, you know, we're going to mess with your money. They're messing with your money. Maybe you need to get in order. And as an entertainer, they can easily mess with your money. Yeah. Oh, we're going to blackball you? Yeah, blackball you.
Blackball you. Yeah.
And that's what they do. So as an athlete, we're going to put you down. You know, I forgot the basketball player that went to the White House, and this was during the Bush years, and he wore dashiki, and Michael Jordan had a problem with him and after that nobody picked him up and stuff. So here it is. He had won the 3-point shooting, you know, and he had won that the year before. Did all these things, but after he did that, they just shut him down. And so, you know, why? Because he's an athlete and they control your income. And, you know, so it's difficult for an entertainer to really be able to move forward with an agenda, you know, like he's talking about, because their job is to entertain you. And I'm not your entertainer.
But that day is all over.
That day is all over.
We mean business now, and we are determined.
That's where we are right now.
To gain our rightful place in God's world.
That's where we need to be. We need to mean business.
And that's all this whole thing is about. We aren't engaged in any negative protest and in any negative arguments with anybody. We are saying that we are determined to be men. We are determined to be people. We are saying that we are God's children. And if we are God's children, we don't have to live like we are forced to live. Now, what does all of this mean in this great period of history? It means that we've got to stay together.
All right, I'm going to pause on that one. What did he say? He said, during this time, in order for us to achieve, what does that mean? We have to stay together. So these words I'm playing today because the problem has not changed. So therefore, the solution has not changed. And this is a great leader. And this is what is being played. This is why we're playing it. But like I say, we're only going to hear the last part. I've seen over the mountaintop. That's it. But they're not telling you the solution that he gave. They're not telling you the attitude that you have to have, you know, to be able to achieve. Because why? You're going to be repositioning. The ones that's putting it out in the media, these people know that if you actually hear these words and are inspired by it today and act upon it, then we're going to be changing that position where we're going to be working for ourselves. You know, we don't necessarily have to be working, they'd have to be working for us. We need to be working for ourselves.
Got to stay together and maintain unity. You know,
and maintain unity.
Whenever Pharaoh wanted to prolong the period of slavery in Egypt, he had a favorite formula for doing it. What was that? He kept the slaves fighting among themselves.
And that's what they do with us. You know, even the style of leadership where, you know, you have entertainers, going back to it because that's the leadership for your generation and stuff, or even other people, not even politicians. battling each other. One of the things we try to do, huh?
Politicians
They're
entertainers now too.
That's true. They are, and they're battling. Want to talk about each other. I remember some of the greatest things I saw with Paul Robeson and Jackie Robinson. They had there was an issue that they tried to create between them because Paul Robeson spoke against black people going to fight against Russia. And at that time, Russia had it in their constitution that racism was a crime, and also that racism was a crime, and also he was on the anti-lynching committee, because there was a lot of lynchings going on. So they got Jackie Robinson to come speak against him, and he spoke against him, and he said that Paul Robeson didn't represent the Negro people, and Robinson later on said he regretted that he even did that once he realized what the system was about. But when they went to Paul Robeson, they said, "What do you have to say about it?" And he said, "I'm not going to speak with you about my brother. If that's what my brother had to say, then that's it." And this is the type of leadership. Same thing with Nelson Mandela. When Nelson Mandela came to Madison Square Garden and with Ted Koppel, and he was speaking, and he had the other leader from another group, and they actually did like a Zoom type of situation, and they had him speaking, and he started, talking about the issues there. He said, "Well, why haven't you come to talk to me, Mandela?" And Mandela looked at him and he said, "Brother, I'm not going to air our dirty laundry on international TV. When I get back, I will talk with you." You see? And constantly, that's what they're doing. We'll get it that people that like Malcolm X are going to talk about Martin Luther King. You see? And that's why here, you see on our show, we talk about Malcolm, and we talk about, and we do the introduction, but both of them were for that cause. But they were coming from different directions. Too many times, we're coming from going to that same point. And instead of all going to that center, what we'll do is just start looking at each other and going towards each other. And then that center, that point, is not touching. That's what too many times. And the same thing with the rap battle. Here it is. I'm going to battle you. This guy battles that guy. And once you put it in, that's your leadership, they put it in that way that it's constant. I got to battle you. I got to take you out. This type of situation, as opposed to build you up. And that's what we have to do. We have to start changing that type of mode. So we have to work together. And like you said, Pharaoh, and it's beautiful how he uses the history, the Bible and stuff at that time, and he's going over that, and he's using that example of modern, times today.
But whenever the slaves get together, something happens in Pharaoh's court, and he cannot hold the slaves in slavery. When the slaves get together, that's the beginning of getting out of slavery. Now let us maintain unity. Secondly, let us keep the issues where they are. The issue is injustice. The issue is the refusal of Memphis to be fair and honest in its dealings with its public servants who happen to be sanitation workers.
Two sanitation workers that got killed, while at work, and that's what they were complaining about the conditions. So they was coming to help the striking sanitation workers.
That's always the problem with a little violence. You know what happened the other day, and the press dealt only with the window breaking.
Which
I read
still doing now.
They very seldom got around to mentioning the fact that 1,300 sanitation workers are on strike, and that Memphis is not being fair to them, and that Mayor Loeb is in dire need of a doctor. They didn't get around to that.
It's like they did with the protests that we had, or they talk about the breaking of the windows, but they can focus on the fact why, and they constantly do that. This is the same media that is controlled by the
now
big
we're
names.
going to march again, and we've got to march again in order to put the issue where it is supposed to be. everybody to see that there are 1,300 of God's children here suffering. Sometimes going hungry, going through dark and dreary nights, wondering how this thing is going to come out. That's the issue. We've got to say to the nation, we know how it's coming out. But when people get caught up with that which is right and they are willing to sacrifice for it, there is no stopping for it short of victory.
He said, and when we've got to say this nation, we know how it's coming. For when people get up with that which is right and they are willing to sacrifice for it, there's no stopping short of victory. And this is why, one of the things we're emphasizing, that it takes all of us. It takes all of us to get involved. And not just, this leader. We sit back and quarterback and expect one individual to make that change. No, everybody has to get involved at every level. Volunteer.
We aren't going to let any man stop us. Sprinkled, but we knew water. That couldn't stop us. And we just went on before the dogs, and we would look at them, and we'd go on before the water hoses, and we would look at it. And we just go on singing over my head, I see freedom in there. And then we would be thrown into paddy wagons, and sometimes we were stacked in there like sardines in a can. They would throw us in, and old Bull would say, take them out.
For the sake of time.
And shoes to wear down here. It's all right to talk about streets flowing with milk and honey. But God has commanded us to be concerned about the slums down here and his children who can't eat 3 square meals a day. It's all right to talk about the New Jerusalem, but one day, God's preacher must talk about the new New York, the new Atlanta, the new Philadelphia, the new Los Angeles, the new Memphis, Tennessee.
Now it's him calling out to all the preachers, all the reverends, all the people to get involved, to be able to make the changes, not just wait to the next life, but he's like take get involved and make that change, being active.
This is what we have to do. Now the other thing we'll have to do is this. Always anchor our external direct action with the power of economic withdrawal.
So that's major.
And we are poor people.
Poor people individually.
Individually, we are poor when you compare us with white society in America.
Like I said, we're poor compared to white society.
We are
We're always
poor.
doing that.
Never stop. Forget that collectively, that means all of us together. Collectively, we are richer than all the nations in the world with the exception of 9.
He said we're
You
richer
ever
than
think
all
about
of
that?
the nations in the world except for 9. And it's probably pretty much the
After
same
you
today.
leave the United
Maybe
States,
a few
Soviet
more.
Russia,
And we don't look at it.
Great
Our
Britain,
economy, we don't look at our power. He
West
said,
Germany, France, I can name others. The American Negro collectively is richer than most nations of the world. We have an
and that's before
annual
we even got approved
income of
in
more
the
than
60s,
$30 billion a
70s,
year,
80s,
which
and
is
stuff.
more than all of the exports of the United States and more than the national budget of Canada. Did you know that?
He was talking about
That's
economics,
power
bringing
right
us
there,
together on
if
that.
we
And
know
that's
how
where
to
we need to
prove
be.
it.
This is a plan. Not just I have a dream. No, here's a plan,
We don't have to argue with
a
anybody.
reality. and the reality is the same.
We don't have to curse and
I have to
go
argue.
around acting bad with our words. We don't need any bricks and bottles. We don't need any Molotov cocktails.
No.
We just need to go around to these stores and to these massive industries in our country and say, God sent us by here to say to you that you're not treating his children right. And we come by here to ask you to make the first item on your agenda fair treatment where God's children are concerned.
That's
Now,
right.
if you're not prepared to do that, we do have an agenda that we must follow. And our agenda calls for withdrawing economic support from you.
See, it's still the same. You got to use that power, that economic power. It's talking about as it changes. And we got the morals to hold you. That's why that blackout day, July 7th, showed the
So
power.
as a result of this, we're asking you tonight to go out and tell your neighbors not to buy Coca-Cola in Memphis.
And that was major for him to boycott Coca-Cola. They still have this in the 80s.
Go by and tell them not to buy sealed pressed milk. Tell them not to buy what is the other bread, Wonder Bread.
Wonder Bread. So he was hitting amazing
And
people.
what is the other bread?
That's why he was having a problem. It wasn't just,
Tell them not to buy
we shall
hard
overcome.
bread.
Saying use the economics, shut it down. You don't support us, we don't give you our
Jesse
money.
Jackson has said up to now, only the garbage men
Young
have been
Jesse.
feeling pain. Now we must kind of redistribute the pain.
And that's it. And the economics, that's how you hurt it. You know?
We are choosing these companies because they have been fair in their hiring policies.
And they still not.
We are choosing them because they can begin
50
the
years
process of saying they are going to support the needs and the rights of these men who are on strike. And then they can move on downtown and tell Mayor Loeb to do what is right.
That's how we have to do it. We have to use that economic power.
And not only that, we've got to strengthen black institutions.
All right. This is, like you said, he's laying out a plan, keeping the unity, use our economic powers. Now he's going into strengthening black institutions, supporting our banks, supporting our businesses. So
I call upon you to take your money out of the banks downtown and deposit your money in Tri-State Bank.
you know, man, people have a problem with him making that statement. They're like, this man is going to another level.
We want a bank-in movement in Memphis.
A banking movement, not a sitting
Go by
banking.
the Savings and Loan Association. I'm not asking you something that we don't do ourselves in SPLC.
Right. Not talking,
Judge Hooks and
not
others will
doing,
tell you
but
that
talking and doing.
we have an account here in the Savings and Loan Association from the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. We are telling you to follow what we are doing. Put your money there. You have 6 or 7 black insurance companies here in the city of Memphis. Take out your insurance there. We want to have an insurance in.
Good. I'm going to do that now.
Now these are some practical
Segregation
things
forced us
that
to
we
do
can
things
do.
that
We
we don't do
begin
now.
the process of building a great economic base. And at the same time, we are putting pressure where it really hurts.
Okay. He said, we begin the process of building a greater economic base. Don't just put pressure on the people, but you don't have nothing for them to go to. Then they're going to go to anybody else or somebody else or somebody else. Their opposition, their friend, they're good cop, bad cop. Okay, well, he's a bad cop. I'm the good cop, but it's the same people. And then they're going to offer you alternative because you have nowhere to go. No, build up yours, establish it, and then direct the people which way to go to keep the money in the family.
You to follow through here. Now let me say as I move to my that we've got to give ourselves to this struggle until the end.
It ain't over.
Nothing would be more tragic than to stop at this point in Memphis. We got to see it through. When we have our march, you need to be there. If it means leaving work, if it means leaving school, be there. Be concerned about your brother. You may not be on strike.
Be concerned about your brother always.
But either we go up together or we go down together.
Either we go up together, we go down together. We need everybody to be involved and support the efforts of those that's making change.
Let us develop a kind of dangerous unselfishness.
Which is opposite what they want you to be, selfish as can
One
be.
day a man
Dangerous
came to
unselfishness.
Jesus.
This is beautiful.
He wanted to raise some questions about some vital matters of life. At points he wanted to trick Jesus and show him that he knew a little more than Jesus knew and throw him off base. Now that question could have easily ended up in a philosophical and theological debate. But Jesus immediately pulled that question from midair and placed it on the dangerous curve between Jerusalem and Jericho. He talked about a certain man who fell among thieves. You remember that a Levite? And the priest passed by on the other side. They didn't stop to help him. Finally, a man of another race came by. He got down from his beast, decided not to be compassionate by proxy. But he got down with him, administered first aid, and helped the man in need. Jesus ended up saying this was the good man, this was the great man.
Good Samaritan.
Because he had the capacity to project the eye into the bow and to be concerned about his brother. Now, you know, we use our imagination a great deal to try to determine why the priest and the Levite didn't stop. At times we say they were busy going to a church meeting, an ecclesiastical gathering, and they had to get on down to Jerusalem so they wouldn't be late for their meeting. At other times, we would speculate that there was a religious law that one who was engaged in religious ceremonials was not to touch a human body 24 hours before the ceremony. And every now and then we begin to wonder whether maybe they were not going down to Jerusalem, down to Jericho, rather, to organize a Jericho Road Improvement Association. That's a possibility. Maybe they felt that it was better to deal with the problem from the causal root rather than to get bogged down with an individual effect.
That's what people are. Oh yeah, I'm
I'm going to tell you what my imagination tells me.
man. You know, just let stuff go.
It's possible that those men were afraid. You see, the Jericho Road is a dangerous road. I remember when Mrs. King and I were first in Jerusalem. We rented a car and drove from Jerusalem down to Jericho. And as soon as we got on that road, I said to my wife, I can see why Jesus used this as the setting for his parable. It's a winding, meandering road. It's really conducive for ambushing. You start out in Jerusalem, which is about 1,200 miles,
1,200 feet.
or rather 1,200 feet above sea level. And by the time you get down to Jericho, 15 or 20 minutes later, you're about 2,200 feet below sea level.
So it's real steep
That's
and
a dangerous road. In the days of Jesus, it came to be known as the bloody paths. You know, it's possible that the priest and the Levite looked over that man on the ground and wondered if the robbers were still around. It's possible that they felt that the man on the ground was merely faking. And he was acting like he had been robbed and hurt in order to seize them over there, lure them there for quick and easy seizure. And so the first question that the priest asked, the first question that the Levite asked was, if I stop to help this man, what will happen to me? But then the Good Samaritan came by, and he reversed the question. If I do not stop to help this man, what will happen to him?
I got to pause on that. This is important. Like you said, he asked the question. He said the first question Levite asked, if I stop to help this man, what will happen to me? And that's where many people are. You know, Martin was killed. Malcolm was killed. And so many people are scared to push it, go all the way. You know, many times you're doing something, whatever, and they're like, well, you know, I'm not going out there. I'm not putting myself out there. What's going to happen to me? You know, I won't do this. I won't make the next effort. But he asked the question, if I don't, then what's going to happen? And for us, ours is, for my generation, it's what's going to happen to your generation. You see? You know, a lot of times people are saying they don't have the time, they're doing this, they're taking care, and we're not making a change for y'all. You know, as you see, it's constant. Things haven't changed. And from his last speech, he talked about how the opposition, the evil ones, take advantage of time. They're constantly using time to be able to fight against us while we sit back and waste time. You see? So if we're not spending the time, if we're not making that sacrifice to be able to look out for your generation and the next generation, then who is? So, and if we don't, like you said, if we do not take that time out to be able to help and prepare for the next generation, for our tribe, for our people, then, you know, what will happen to you? What will happen if we don't? And your generation is important for us to be able to work together and understand and have the patience. We have to have patience with y'all, and y'all have to have respect with us because of the knowledge and with our elders, our older generation. This is beautiful, so go outside.
That's the question before you tonight. Not if I stop to help the sanitation workers, what will happen to my job? Not if I stop to help the sanitation workers, what will happen to all of the hours that I usually spend in my office every day and every week as a pastor? The question is not if I stop to help this man in need, what will happen to me? The question is, if I do not stop to help the sanitation workers, what will happen to them? That's the question.
If we do not stop and help them, what's going to happen to their generation? If we're not all actively involved, what's going to happen to the next generation? We all have to get involved. Guaranteed loss if we don't.
Let us stand with a greater determination, and let us move on in these powerful days, these days of challenge, to make America what it ought to be. We have an opportunity to make America a better nation. And I want to thank God once more for allowing me to be here with you. You know, several years ago I was in New York City autographing the first book that I had written.
This is wrapping up. This is a beautiful, deep.
The minute black woman came up,
and actually, instead of I seen over the mountaintop, this should be the name of this. And he's talking about this incident.
And I was looking down writing, and I said, yes.
Yeah, if I had
sneezed, if I had sneezed. Before I knew it, I had been stabbed by this demented woman. I was rushed to Harlem Hospital. It was a dark Saturday afternoon. That blade had gone through, and the x-rays revealed that the tip of the blade was on the edge of my aorta, the main artery. And once that's punctured, you're drowned in your own blood. That's the end of you. It came out in the New York Times the next morning that if I had merely sneezed, I would have died. Well, about 4 days later, they allowed me, after the operation, after my chest had been opened and the blade had been taken out, to move around in the wheelchair in the hospital. They allowed me to read some of the mail that came in, and from all over the states and the world, kind letters came in. I read a few, but one of them I will never forget. I had received one from the president and the vice president. I've forgotten what those telegrams said. I received a visit and a letter from the governor of New York, and I've forgotten what that letter said. Yes. But there was another letter that came from a little girl, a young girl, who was a student at the White Plains High School. And I looked at that letter, and I'll never forget it. It said simply, "Dear Dr. King, I am a 9th grade student at the White Plains High School." She said, "While it should not matter, I would like to mention that I'm a white girl. I read in the paper of your misfortune and of your suffering. And I read that if you had sneezed, you would have died. I'm simply writing you to say that I'm so happy that you didn't sneeze." And I want to say tonight,
that's what the streets say. Sneeze, his life would have been done.
I want to say tonight that I too am
his life would have
happy
been done.
that I didn't sneeze, because if I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been around here to 1960. And students all over the South started sitting in at lunch counters. And I knew that as they were sitting in, they were really standing up for the best in the American dream, and taking the whole nation back to those great wells of democracy, which were dug deep by the founding fathers in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been around here in 1961, when we decided to take a ride for freedom and ended segregation in interstate travel. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been around here in 1962. The Negroes in Albany, Georgia, decided to straighten their backs up. And whenever men and women straighten their backs up, they are going somewhere, because a man can't ride your back unless it is bent.
Hold up. Okay, yeah. He said if I hadn't sneezed, I wouldn't have been in 63. Yeah, if I hadn't sneezed, I wouldn't have been around in 62 when Negroes in Albany, Georgia decided to straighten up their backs. And now we're going through Georgia. Look at Georgia. What's happening now? They're straightening up their backs. They're standing strong. They're not letting nobody. He said they decided to straighten up their backs. And what he said, and whatever men and women straighten their backs, they're going somewhere, because a man can't ride your back unless it's bent. You see, so we have to stand up. That's why he keeps talking about stand up as men, and we're standing up as men, and that's why they were able to win that election. That's why I said this is, if I hadn't sneezed,
I wouldn't have been here in 1963. The black people of Birmingham, Alabama, aroused the conscience of this nation and brought into being the Civil Rights Bill. If I had
and we're
sneezed,
still using that.
I wouldn't have had a
Civil
chance
Rights Bill.
later that year in
Still use
August
that.
to try to tell America about a dream that I had had. If I had sneezed,
And that our dream is one line.
I
We
wouldn't
turn
have been
that to
down in
whole
Selma, Alabama, to see the great movement there. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been in Memphis to see a community rally around those brothers and sisters who are suffering. I'm so happy that I didn't sneeze.
I'm so happy he didn't sneeze.
They were telling me.
God controls all. God didn't want him to sneeze, and he allowed him to do that.
Now it doesn't matter now.
This is the ending and stuff. Like you said, here it is that basically the thing about if he hadn't sneezed, wrapping it up, if he hadn't sneezed, that means basically God is the one that controls. And God made it that he didn't sneeze. So he can do all of these things. And he's done these things and he reached it. And now he's saying, but look, it don't matter if I sneeze not or whatever they do. So this is the last part. This is it. I'm gonna be quiet.
It really doesn't matter what happens now. I left Atlanta this morning, and as we got started on the plane, there were 6 of us. The pilot
don't matter what happens.
said over the public address system, we're sorry for the delay. But we have Dr. Martin Luther King on the plane. And to be sure that all of the bags were checked. And to be sure that nothing would be wrong on the plane, we had to check out everything carefully. And we've had the plane protected and guarded all night. And then I got into Memphis. And some began to say the threats, or talk about the threats that were out. Or what would happen to me from some of our sick white brothers. Well,
What are you saying? They don't play that one.
We've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter with me now.
So he knew
because
it
I've
was
been to the mountaintop. I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And he's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over. And I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you. But I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land.
You get to the promised land by doing everything you said. Not from the dream, from the reality you told us to.
About anything, I'm not fearing any man.
Not fearing
Mine
no man.
eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
That's leadership. Well,
Welcome to Democracy.
that was the end of our show. That was a powerful, powerful speech. We need to start listening to those of the past a little bit more often. And you want to end? Huh? No, say it. It's still on. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. No, I mean, it's just, like you said, it's a lot of things in here that aren't being pushed, and he drew out a plan, very simple plan. It just takes a lot of people to get together and implement it.
Yeah, he has it. Malcolm has it. W. Du Bois, as a lot of days, Paul Robeson, Here I Stand, Frederick Douglass, these are because of racism, this attack, this disease, and, people are using the term white supremacy. I just use supremacy. Supremacy is supremacy. We dealing with it here, but you have Chinese the supremacy, you have tribal supremacy. It's an attitude. And the biggest supremacist, as we point out, is the devil himself, Iblis. He said, Ana khayru minhu, khalaqatani min nar wa khalaqatahu min tin. I am better than him. You've created me from fire while you created him from earth. So the original racist, the original supremacist that said, Ana khayru minhu, there is the devil, Iblis, Satan. So, yes, it changes from color to color, but we're dealing with one now. It comes in a different form, and we know how to work that form, and the people have come up with their plans, and we need to be able to work with that. So I appreciate it. Thank you very much. This show is a little extended, but we have the storm, and we changed the program, so peace be with you, and we'll see you next time for Black Our Story Month. We're not going to call it History. Our Story Month. We're going to have some lectures and speeches, and we won't play the speeches, but we'll give the statements. So, all right, peace be with you.